All right, so what about that other domain of reading through apps or portable devices? What about digital comic books? Now that's a whole different ballgame because comic books need to be read in color. For the most part, they're not available on regular Nooks, regular Kindles. Nook Color, maybe if there's an app for it. I'm actually not 100% sure at this point in time without digging through the website to take a look. They're most commonly read on tablets though, iPads or Android tablets. You can get apps though to read them on your PC, your Macintosh, or I guess you could basically just read them in your browser. And there's an equivalent app you could get for iOS phones, Android phones, and so forth. So what are the main ones for that? Well, if you go to DC or Marvel, a lot of the different comic companies have different apps where you can get digital comics, but for the most part, they all go through Comixology.com anyway, Comixology. Well, if they all go through there, why have multiple apps on your desktop or on your tablet? Why not just say, forget it, I'm just going to get the Comixology app and have them all in one place. That's what I did after first having a DC Comics app and looking at other companies. So let's check out what this looks like on a tablet. All right, so we have our iPad here, clicking on the Comixology app. You've got your library here. You've also got a store where you can buy books. So I can flip through my Crisis on Infinite Earths stuff. Here's what I've been reading. So I flip through and I say, okay, I want to check out this DC Comics Infinite Crisis here. I've scrolled through just like on an iTunes device, or an iOS device, as this is. And I click read. Nice, pretty cover. And I can either tap with my thumb to jump between pages, okay, or I can swipe with my thumb to turn pages, okay, right? Or what's really kind of cool about Comixology is I can double tap here if I can keep my other hand from hitting it. It can go frame by frame. I want to read this one, then I want to read the next one, and it's called a guided view. It can just take you through the book bit by bit. You can do the same thing on the PlayStation Portable, the PSP, but they have closed their digital store to new comics, so I would not recommend trying to go the PSP route. You're stuck with only previous works, and I think at some point very soon, if not already, they're going to be closing down that part of the shop entirely. So you've got your app to flip through, and that's actually a pretty good one. The big problem with Comixology for me is that it doesn't contain much in the way of Dark Horse. Dark Horse has their own digital apps. If you're looking for Star Wars comics, you need the Dark Horse app. But from how it works, it pretty much works the same way. You can basically swipe to change pages. You double tap it, and it's going to go basically bit by bit, part of a page to part of a page. Okay, so there's Cole Skywalker, now it's bigger Cole, and so on, and so on, and so on. Almost animated in a sense. I mean, I guess you could call it that. It's certainly more animated than a regular traditional page, but it's basically just doing what your eyes do for you as you move down the page. If you want something a little more portable, if you're not used to carrying a tablet around, there are apps for cell phones. So I've got my Comixology app pulled up here. There's Infinite Crisis #1 again. I click Read Now, and it's going to pull up. I guess I was near the end of this one before. It's going to pull up the comic book. There we go. So we've got our guided view going on here in this case. Back and forth. Again, it's kind of hard to get my finger to do it correctly when I'm not looking at it. So I'm doing it backwards here, basically. Now you can set it to show you the entire screen if you want. The problem with that is that it's very, very tiny, so you won't be able to read it. You really want to use guided view on a small item like this. You can also change the orientation and that sort of thing, and it will change with it, just like you can do as well on the iPad. Now, here's the crappy part. You can get most major publishers of the Comixology app, which you can get, again, on iPad, whatever, iOS or Android devices. Dark Horse, at least as the time I'm recording this, only has an app for iPhone, for iOS, iPhones, iPads, and such. And Marvel is the same way. Marvel stuff, even through Comixology, can only be purchased and viewed on an iOS system. So basically, you're limited to like DC and some of the other secondary publishers, Image and such, if you're using an Android device. They're nice and cool and portable, but still, for my money, I was pretty happy reading digital comics on my Android device, but I got tired of swiping constantly to go from panel to panel to panel to panel. I actually prefer to read them now on the iPad and just look at the whole page at the same time as if I'm reading a regular comic book. When it comes to comics, I would highly recommend a tablet, not a cell phone or other small device here, okay? So, hopefully that'll give you a sense of what these things look like, the big variances. Again, the biggest variances being app availability, if you're talking about Dark Horse Comics. If you're talking about books, the issue is e-ink versus a lit screen behind it. And the fact that, remember, whichever publisher, I guess, bookseller, not publisher, whatever bookseller you buy from, you're sticking with that one to keep reading those same materials. They do not cross over between unless you use an app, in which case you can bring it all together, except for the iBooks, which cannot be brought onto, say, an Android system. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Remember, you can send in your questions to the, EU Review, EU Review at solosound.net. We'll try to work them into the show if you have more questions or concerns about this particular topic. Thanks for listening.